If you've watched NASCAR in any capacity since about 2004, you probably recognize the name JJ Yeley. He's made 341 Cup starts across 17 years, and is really a perennial backmarker. He's remembered by some as a NASCAR bust, and I can't necessarily disagree with that statement. However, before he went stock car racing, he was a fixture in American Open Wheel. He found success in USAC sprints, Silver Crowns, and midgets in the mid to late 90s. So much success, in fact, that he became a development driver for Team Menard. With the help of Menard, he'd make his debut in the Indy Racing League. However, much like his stock car career, his IndyCar career wouldn't bear any meaningful fruit. Today, I tell the brief story of JJ Yeley's IndyCar career. He would make his IndyCar debut at the second race of the 1998 Indy Racing League season in Phoenix. Driving for Sinden Racing Services, he'd have an weekend. He'd qualify 10th of 28 cars, but would crash with Davey Hamilton out of turn 1. However, he did far better than teammate Dr. Jack Miller, who would fail to qualify for the race entirely. Indianapolis would end up being his best IndyCar race. However, it didn't start that way at all, as after just barely qualifying ahead of his teammate, he'd spin in the first lap at the very first turn. In doing so, he nearly took out eventual winner Eddie Cheever. However, Yeley would make it up at the finish, eventually finishing 3 laps down in 9th. This would end up being his only IndyCar top 10. JJ would be a non-factor in Texas, qualifying at the back and finishing 19th after running into mechanical issues during the race. New Hampshire was another terrible day. After getting passed cleanly by his teammate, Yeley lost control of his car and backed it into the outside wall, immediately blaming it on his teammate who, from my assessment, did pretty much nothing wrong. This is bad enough, but after rejoining the race, he'd spin in turn 1 and cause a 4-car accident. The crash would injure Billy Boat, who would miss the next 2 races. Yeley wouldn't race in Dover either, however, it wasn't for injuries. During qualifying in New Hampshire, John Menard accused AJ Foyt of skullduggery, something I described in my video about the Dover race as sounding like the name of a bad action TV show from the early 80s that never made it past a pilot episode. These accusations went to the point that Robbie Buell's Menard team was withdrawn from Dover, and as a sign of support, JJ Yeley's entry was also withdrawn. That or the team saw what a cluster you-know-what an IndyCar race at Dover was going to be like and bailed out before they busted any of their equipment. He wouldn't race again until Atlanta, about a month and a half later, and he'd come back guns blazing. Actually, that was a lie, as JJ was the slowest qualifier, somehow clocking a lap speed 12 miles an hour slower than pole sitter Billy Boat. He'd only last 58 laps into the race itself, after blowing up his engine. He wouldn't race at all in IndyCar in 1999, but would briefly return in 2000. This time he'd race for Bird McCormick Racing. He'd drive the number 30 car that year, the same car that had been driven earlier that season by Robbie Buell, Ronnie John Cox, and Jared Fogel's Floridian brother. Driving in essentially a glorified chunk of lead, Yeley had really no hope in hell of doing anything in his 3 starts for the team. And shocker of all shockers, his time at the team only resulted in a single top 15 finish. After only 26 laps in Texas, his IndyCar career was over. He was only 23 when he left IndyCar, but I'm not gonna say he should have stayed. JJ Yeley is still racing at the age of 46, and if he stayed in IndyCar, I doubt he'd still be racing to this day. With the demise of CART in 2002, the Indy Racing League got invaded, and Yeley would have nowhere to go. Had he stayed in IndyCar, I doubt he'd be racing in a top series at 26, let alone 46. So while neither his stock car career or IndyCar career were special, I think he probably made the right decision in switching over. Thank you for watching, and have a great afternoon.